Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Talks between Iran and the US over a potential nuclear deal have started in Rome as top delegations from either country meet amid concerns of escalation. Meanwhile, Israel has not ruled out an attack on Iran's nuclear activities. Ukraine has imposed sanctions on 3 Chinese companies claiming they were involved in the production of Iskander missiles. This comes a day after President Zelensky alleged China was supplying Russia with weapons. US President Donald Trump says nice conversations have been had with China amid ongoing trade tensions and tit-for-tat tariff action. Meanwhile, Trump spoke with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer over ongoing and productive trade talks. Local media sources in Gaza say that at least 64 people have been killed in Israeli attacks since Friday morning. The UN has issued an urgent warning over food supplies after Hamas rejected a recent hostage release ceasefire proposal. The Hezbollah chief has said that they will not let anyone disarm it amid pressure from Washington. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes have been reported in southern Lebanon, leading to the death of 2 people, according to local media. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has confirmed the ousting of IRS temporary head Gary Shipley. Reports suggest that Shipley, who was only appointed on Tuesday, was placed by Elon Musk. Michael Fulkender has been named as the replacement. The Trump administration has asked for records from Harvard on foreign funding and ties. It comes after a $2.3 billion of federal funding was cut from the university over pro-Palestinian protests on campus. A US judge has halted Trump's plan for rapid deportation to third countries. Meanwhile, a US senator who visited a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador says he is traumatized but has been moved to a new prison. A high-stakes second round of indirect nuclear talks between Iran and the United States have begun in Rome. Omani diplomats once again are acting as mediators. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is leading Tehran's delegation, while US envoy Steve Witkoff, an ally of President Donald Trump, heads the American side. Araghchi and his team has arrived in Italy ahead of the talks. Araghchi met with Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani in a diplomatic effort to build momentum. The talks follow a reportedly positive first round held in Muscat last week, but tensions remain high. Araghchi expressed serious doubts over US intentions, warning that progress is only possible if unrealistic demands are avoided. President Trump has doubled down on his position that Iran must never acquire nuclear weapons, but also said he hopes for a future where Iran can prosper if an agreement can be reached. Well, joining us to discuss these developments is Madhav Nalapat, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, who's joining us from Trivandrum. Professor Nalapat, thank you ever so much for being here with us. We have to look at these meetings that are taking place in Rome today. What is your expectation from these talks? Can we expect a nuclear deal today?
Well, if we get a nuclear deal today or any time in the foreseeable future, it is going to be a miracle. I don't believe that the Iranian definition of realistic meets the US definition of realistic. Whether it's for Israel, whether it's for US and a lot of other countries, including many in the region, the threat of an Iran nuclear weapon is existential. And obviously they would not want the Iran to progress in its nuclear activity. At the same time, under the previous Trump administration, the Obama deal had been torn up, with the result that Iran, the mullahs in Iran, have a very strong skepticism of US intentions, especially that of Donald Trump. So, very frankly, Now there's a clarification that the fatwa that was issued banning the nuclear activities, I mean nuclear weapons, basically to the fatwa against use of nuclear weapons, not banning nuclear weapons as such. That's quite a major change from the earlier understanding that we all had, that the fatwa was completely banning any nuclear weapons possession by Iran. So the point of the matter is that as far as Israel is concerned, Joshua, the Israelis will go all out against the Iranians. The Israelis view the Iranians as an existential threat. A lot of their capacities and capabilities have been taken out, including the Revolutionary Guard, including, frankly, whatever is bluster. The military wing of Hezbollah is now a shadow of what it was. The military wing of Hamas is now a shadow of what it was. It can do occasional activity against Israel, and then it will be bombarded mercilessly. The point about Benjamin Netanyahu, he will not stop until Iran is denuclearized one way or the other. And I frankly don't see these talks resulting in any congruence between the realism as defined by the US and realism as defined by Iran. If any kind of a deal comes, it will be a cosmetic deal which will have very little significance. The US is insisting on very strong verification. Well, that verification was there, fairly all right during the Obama deal. But yes, it did leave the door open for Iran to develop weapons at a later date. The point is, Joshua, I have long maintained, so long as the clerics are ruling Iran, it is very difficult to basically permit the Iranians the same latitude that could be permitted of democratic countries, especially allied countries, all the fellow members of the Quad, including the country of Japan, which is an extremely important country in safeguarding the Indo-Pacific. So I would only like to say that I think we should temper down our expectations. As far as Israel is concerned, I don't believe Netanyahu is going to stop until he feels he has taken care of the Iranian nuclear program. As it is, the mullahs have become very weak because of the situation regarding Hamas and Hezbollah.
Yes, Professor Nalapat, sorry to cut you off. We are running shorter on time. I do want to bring it back to these discussions in Rome and look at comments that were made by both sides ahead of these talks. Abbas Araghchi saying that he doesn't trust US intentions. Of course, the United States threatening military action if a nuclear deal cannot be agreed. What do you think the sticking point will be for either side in any agreement that might be announced or at least proposed today in Rome?
Look, the reality situation is the Iranians have moved very far ahead in developing a nuclear device. They have moved very, very far ahead. And it's just a very short distance away. I would say what we say, a screwdriver, turn away from a nuclear weapon. So getting them to disarm, getting them to disarm voluntarily is going to be a very difficult sell because, let's be honest, Donald Trump is committed to the security of Israel. And unlike Biden, he's ensuring Israel gets all the weapons it is asking for and what it needs to quote-unquote finish the job, according to Netanyahu, which is completely demolish the Iranian nuclear capability, not just any future arsenal, but the entire nuclear capability. So Joshua, very frankly, let's temper our expectations down about any kind of a realistic deal being happening. Of course, in diplomacies, you have seen cosmetic deals happen, basically for public opinion. On the US side, I would say, Iranian clerics don't care very much about public opinion. But again, I repeat, so long as the clerics are in power and they frankly do not recognize the existence of the State of Israel, they do not even recognize the existence of the Jewish people. They are totally, it's like Hamas, it's like Hezbollah. It's not just a something against the state of Israel, which frankly is
Professor Nalapat, unfortunately we are out of time. Thank you very much for your insight. As these talks take place in the European city of Rome, we will of course bring you all of those updates today and moving forward. But we stay now looking at the conflict in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, and the United States is reportedly prepared to recognise Russia's control of Crimea as part of a broader peace deal between Moscow and Kyiv, according to Bloomberg News. This comes as Ukraine imposes sanctions on 3 Chinese companies, accusing them of helping Russia produce advanced Iskander missiles, a claim that China has firmly denied, reaffirming its neutral stance in the conflict. Meanwhile, the US has proposed easing sanctions on Russia in exchange for a lasting ceasefire in Ukraine in what European officials described as a renewed diplomatic effort. However, frustration is growing within the Trump administration over stalled negotiations, with both President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio making it clear that the US will not continue the talks indefinitely without progress. Let's listen to what Trump said.
What do you want to see from Russia and Ukraine?
I have to see, my whole life has been one big negotiation, and I know when people are playing us, and I know when they're not, and I have to see an enthusiasm to want to end it. And I think I see that enthusiasm. I think I see it from both sides.
Do you think Russia's
But you're
playing
going to know
you?
soon.
Do you think Russia's playing you?
No, nobody's playing me.
We move on, but we stay with US President Donald Trump, who has hinted at easing tariffs on China, saying that nice conversations are underway. Speaking at the White House, Trump said talks with Beijing are going very good. He suggested rolling back some duties imposed earlier this month, citing concerns about consumer costs. Trump linked future TikTok deals to broader trade talks. China, meanwhile, has chosen not to escalate the standoff. This comes amid growing market concerns over the ongoing US-China trade war. Here is what President Trump said on this matter.
And by the way, we have nice conversations going with China just to intercede, you know. It's like really very good. But
well, despite this rhetoric, the US has accused China of dominating key sectors and proposed port fee hikes. In response, China has urged the US to fact-check before blaming China, calling the accusations harmful to both sides. The US has threatened to hike the port fees by $50 a net ton on Chinese shipments. On top of that, the US has also said it will charge $18 a net ton to other countries that are also using Chinese-made ships. Well, joining us to discuss the latest on these tariff negotiations, discussions and tensions is Dr. Satoru Nagao, a fellow at the Hudson Institute, who's joining us from Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Nagao, as always, thank you very much for joining us. We've had some messages here from Donald Trump which might show an easing of tensions, saying that conversations are taking place. What do you think is going to be the contents of these conversations that are talking about tariffs?
Trump administration focusing on the how to maintain #1 status in the world. So that's why the Trump administration tariff is in the long term steadily increase. But the recent event surged tariff very drastic pace. So if the US and China continue such kind of high tariff, yes, decoupling process will be accelerated, but at the same time, the side effect of the tariff is also big. So that's why adjusting timing will come through the negotiation. This is not the meaning the complete ceasefire of the tariff war between two. But at the same time, to maintain their economy, they need to do that temporarily. So that's why one by one, they try to step up the negotiation along with their tariff as a card of negotiation. That is happening just now.
Yes, Dr. Nagao. I want to look also at the implications of these actions on global economics. Of course, Trump announcing their $50 per tonne on Chinese ships, but also $18 on those ships that are Chinese vessels, even if they're not being run by Chinese companies. How devastating is a level of action like this on the global economic world?
In the global economy, even if the product is made in other country, even if that under such kind of situation, supply chain of some parts came from China, and the main market is part of the main market is the United States too. So under such kind of situation, any product could lead to the China or United States. So if the tariff is rising between US and China, of course the product is made in other country, their price is affected, their market is affected. So under such kind of situation, what the Trump administration want to do is warning. So cut relation with China is benefit for the companies in other countries. That is one of the message. But at the same time, a little bit too strong tariff or too high tariff, most of the companies in the world cannot accept for their survival. So that's why the adjusting the situation is needed. So that's what, just now, that is what happening, I believe.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, while you've been speaking, we've been showing visuals of Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting during Trump's first term. Given Xi has been on this tour of Southeast Asia, how long do you think it might be until a talk with Donald Trump takes place?
It's Southeast Asia. Because the U.S.-China trade war, including the imposing high tariff, has started when President Trump was president in the first term. So that's why, indeed, this is not new. So since that time, the Chinese company tried to relocate, along with other countries' company tried to relocate from China, but at the same time, Chinese company tried to avoid the tariff between US and China, and they relocate the factory to the Southeast Asia mainly, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia. The Xi Jinping is visiting just now. Indeed, this country is the main destination of the Chinese company which relocates from China. So that's why the made in China is, of course, a little bit limited number. And now, even if the Chinese products they try to make in the other country, in these Southeast Asian countries. So that's why when we check the tariff of the Trump administration, indeed, Vietnam and Cambodia, this country tariff is relatively high. So this is related with China, indirectly related with China. So Southeast Asian country face a side effect of the U.S.-China trade war, and so they need to deal with this situation because they are not China or United States, but they need to deal with the situation because indirectly this is arena of the trade war.
Yes, Dr. Satoru Nagao, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing that insight. The tariffs of Donald Trump will continue to rattle the global markets as those negotiations take place. Stay here on NewsX World for all of those updates. We move now to North America directly, and US Senator Chris Van Hollen detailed his recent meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is wrongfully deported and has been wrongfully deported to El Salvador. He says that Garcia describes being traumatized by his time at the Sesot prison, but has now been moved to a different facility. Van Hollen also reveals the Trump administration has paid $4 million to El Salvador for detaining prisoners. Here is what US Senator Chris Van Hollen has said.
He said he was not afraid of the other prisoners in his immediate cell, but that he was traumatized by being at Sesot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks who called out to him and taunted him in various ways.
Well, US President Donald Trump also shared a photo allegedly showing Kilmar Abrego Garcia's knuckles tattooed with MS-13 as proof of gang ties, but critics say the image is digitally altered. Tech experts and political opponents noted inconsistencies in lighting and font. The photo was never included in court filings, and older images show no such tattoos. Abrego Garcia, who was deported in March despite court protections, fled El Salvador as a teen to escape gang threats. His 2019 arrest was based on a tip, but no solid evidence linked him to MS-13. Legal and political battles continue over the legitimacy of his deportation, but the White House refuses, citing alleged MS-13 ties. Legal battles continue amid these accusations of defying judicial authority and misrepresenting facts. Staying now in North America, and tensions are rising between the Trump administration and Harvard University. A letter sent to Harvard last week demanded changes to hiring, admissions and curriculum. It was signed by a White House task force on anti-Semitism, but now a top Trump official says the letter was unauthorized, according to the New York Times. It was sent by Sean Keaveney, a lawyer at the Department of Health and Human Services. He's also on the anti-Semitism task force. The content was real, but it's unclear if the letter was ever supposed to be sent. Harvard responded publicly, vowing to push back. Hours later, the administration called the letter a mistake. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has launched a wider investigation into Harvard. It's asking for records on foreign funding going back 10 years. Officials claim Harvard failed to fully report contributions from 2014 to 2019, but so far there's no proof of foreign influence. We now head to the Middle East, and Israel's latest airstrikes in Gaza have killed at least 70 people. Homes and tent camps are among the targets in what appears to be one of the deadliest rounds of strikes in recent days, according to local media sources. The United Nations World Food Programme has issued an urgent warning, saying Gaza is on the brink of widespread hunger and that immediate food aid is needed. In the occupied West Bank, 8 Palestinians were arrested by Israeli forces during a raid on the Fawar refugee camp south of Hebron, according to the Wafa news agency. Meanwhile, media reports say that 2 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli bombardment on Al-Ishrin Street in the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. 2 women also reportedly died in a drone strike on the town of Nasser, northeast of Rafah in southern Gaza. And in Gaza City, Israeli forces are reportedly bombarding buildings in the Shujaya neighborhood in the east of the city. Of course, these attacks continuing in March following a ceasefire deal which came to an end without a hostage release, and ceasefire being agreed upon by both Hamas and Israel. We stay in the Middle East now, but shift our directions to Yemen. Tensions in the Middle East are continuing to escalate, with Yemen's Houthi rebels vowing to intensify their attacks against Israel and the United States. This comes after deadly US airstrikes on the Ras Issa oil port in Yemen that killed at least 80 people and injured 170 others, according to Houthi health officials. The US says the strikes were aimed at crippling the Houthis' economic power by targeting fuel infrastructure used to fund their operations. But the group responded with a stern warning. They vowed to continue their support for Palestinians until the war in Gaza ends. Adding to the turmoil, the Houthis claimed responsibility for shooting down another US MQ-9 Reaper drone. It is the 6th since early March, raising concerns in Washington. Despite billions spent and mounting casualties, analysts say the Houthis' leadership and strike capabilities remain largely intact. The conflict shows no signs of currently slowing down. We now move to Africa, and the violence in Sudan's Darfur region escalates as survivors describe harrowing scenes from an attack on the Zamzam displacement camp by the Rapid Support Forces. At least 300 people were reportedly killed and 400,000 displaced, with reports of executions and arsons during the raid. Survivors recount losing their families and fleeing for safety, while others describe looting, fires and targeted killings in place of refuge like mosques. Let's listen to what some of those survivors have said.
مشاكل طرد ودق وحرق وشالوا لنا حاجة ما خلوا لنا. تمينا فترة في هلة مرة، أخذنا لنا شهر برضو في نزاحة. من هلة مرة توالي مشينا سلومة، بعد ما سلومة يلا قعدنا تقريبا شهرين إلا كده. ومن سلومة هناك جونا يلا برضو مشاكل كتير ترد ودرب وحرق. ما تلانا بحاجة خير شفا والحاجات الأكل الحلل الخفيف، ما شلنا ولا الخوطة ولا
Well, in response, the RSF has denied accusations of atrocities, claiming the camp housed army loyalists. Meanwhile, humanitarian groups warn of dire conditions as displaced people flood into neighbouring Tawila, where medical teams report hundreds of gunshot injuries. The conflict, which began in April of 2023, continues to cause devastation across parts of the region. We stay in Africa now, as gunmen have killed at least 17 people in Nigeria's central state of Benue, marking the latest outbreak of intercommunal violence in the region. Police report that suspected militia invaded the area overnight, sparking a violent clash with security forces. As the attackers were being repelled, they shot at unsuspecting farmers, allegedly killing 5 people. Meanwhile, a simultaneous attack in a neighbouring area has left 12 people dead, according to local reports. Clashes between nomadic cattle herders and farmers over land use have been common in central Nigeria, and recent attacks in nearby plateau states have claimed over 100 lives. The violence is also taking on ethnic and religious overtones in the region. Moving on now, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is heading to Saudi Arabia next week. The agenda is to boost trade and investment, enhancing energy cooperation, strengthening defence ties, and reviving the stalled India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. Modi is expected to hold talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Jeddah. The visit comes at a time of regional volatility, from ongoing Red Sea tensions involving the Houthis to the aftermath of the Gaza conflict and broader US-Iran dynamics. Saudi Arabia was India's third largest source of crude oil and LPG in 2023 and 2024. With energy needs growing, India is keen to secure more favourable deals. Bilateral trade between the two countries stood at nearly $43 billion last year, with India exporting over $11 billion worth of goods. Defence cooperation is also gaining momentum. After years of limited engagement, the two sides have now conducted 2 joint naval exercises. Modi's visit is expected to add fresh momentum to a rapidly evolving partnership. Moving now to China, and 21 humanoid robots raced alongside thousands of runners in Beijing's Yichuan half marathon on Saturday. The robots from companies like Droid VP and Noetics Robotics varied in size from just over a metre to nearly 6 feet tall. Some robots wore running shoes, while others sported headbands or boxing gloves. They were supported by human trainers throughout the 21-kilometre course. The winning robot, Tiangong Ultra, finished in 2 hours and 40 minutes. By comparison, the men's human winner clocked just over an hour. Officials compared the event to a race car competition, emphasising teamwork and technology. China sees robotics as a future economic driver, though some experts remain sceptical of its industrial promise. Christians around the world are celebrating Easter Sunday, a day of hope, renewal and resurrection. People are gathering in churches, homes and public places for prayers, family meals and celebrations to honour this important day. Easter marks the resurrection of Jesus Christ, symbolising victory over death and reminding people of light after darkness. In Vienna, the Easter markets are filled with colourful eggs, a tradition that adds to the spring celebrations in the city. At the Vatican, the Chrism Mass is being held, a special Holy Week to remember the Passion of Christ, his death and resurrection. In Tijuana, Mexico, migrants at the US border joined in Holy Week celebrations, listening to prayers and taking part in the foot washing tradition. Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking international news.